Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm R.J. Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
So, my next movie, we're going to take a hard shift from movies that I know and loved well to one that I literally watched last night. I wanted to see this movie anyway, and this gives the perfect excuse to do so. This is brand new. It's on Amazon Prime. It's only been on for a short time, and it's receiving fantastic reviews. We're into I guess I don't know quite what the genre would be. It's a drama but it involves real people, but it's a fictional scenario. It's called One Night in Miami, and it's a fictional encounter with Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke in a hotel room at the Hampton House in February of 1964. And it plays very much like a play, which I believe it was. It mostly takes place in one room and goes from there. So it's my speaking on it could be a little bit awkward because I literally just watched it last night, so I'm kind of processing some of it, but I absolutely recommend this film. I will say, for those who are, who like a lot of action, who like things to move quickly, this movie runs about 2 hours, and you got to give it a little time to get to where it's going. We got about an hour into it, and I wasn't sure. I wasn't quite sure what the point was, but then it starts to kind of find its focus at about the hour mark. Takes a while for everybody to get together, and then it takes a while for things to start rolling, and then you kind of get to where it's going, and it's well worth the trip. I absolutely recommend it. So the facts on it: it's a 2020 American drama about a fictionalized meeting. Yeah, okay. So this happens right after Muhammad Ali. Well, he's still called Cassius Clay in the movie, but this is right after his win over Sonny Liston, and he's preparing to announce his conversion to Islam and the changing of his name to Muhammad Ali. I can neither confirm nor deny that this is when that actually happened, but that is supposed to be what's going to happen the next day. A lot of it has to do with Cassius Clay being very nervous about making that announcement and what may come of it. And then and Malcolm X is there as his spiritual advisor, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But he's there to kind of advise everybody, and he has some harsh words for everybody in the room. And this eventually leads to quite an argument. But let's see. This is the first feature directed by Regina King from a screenplay by Kent Powers based on the stage play of the same name. It stars, I'm gonna go down to, I'm gonna name off some of their creds as I name them. Kingsley Ben Adir as Malcolm X, who has been in the OA. Eli Gorey as Cassius Clay. I really especially enjoyed his performance. I thought he really captured the young man who was kind of practicing his trash talk persona. He hadn't quite got it down yet. He was kind of working it out, but you get to see that as he tries to practice it, and he's looking in the mirror, and it's a whole lot of fun. He really captured that Muhammad Ali cadence that I remember from the 70s and 80s.
I'm pretty.
Yeah. So he's previously been in the 100 and Riverdale. Jim Brown is played by Aldous Hodge, who is going to be Hawkman in the Black Adam movie. I'm sure, John, that's not news to you.
Nope, I knew it. And I'm excited about it.
He was in The Invisible Man. I'm pretty sure I remember his character. He was in Straight Outta Compton, and he was in Hidden Figures. So he had quite a list there. And Leslie Odom Jr. as Sam Cooke, who had quite a list to him, but I'm sure most people, if it's clicked with you, probably remember him as Aaron Burr from Hamilton. So Leslie Odom Jr.'s had quite a awesome few years. He was also in a favorite TV show of mine named Smash, if you remember, from NBC, about the Marilyn Monroe musical. He was one of the actors in that. And he sang America the Beautiful at Super Bowl 52 a few years back. So Leslie Odom Jr. is great, but let me give you a little more background, and then I'll try and kind of decipher what this movie meant to me. So the film premiered at the Venice Film Festival on September 7th, 2020, a first for an African-American film director. It was released in limited theaters by Amazon Studios starting on December 25th, 2020, before being released digitally on Prime Video January 15th, 2021. That's half a month ago at this recording, so very recent, brand new. Reviews are overwhelmingly positive, and they should be, with critics praising King's direction, the performances, and the screenplay. So what seems to be happening here is it's less relevant whether or not Malcolm X met with these people at this particular time, but what matters is that they're at a crossroads. Every person here is at a crossroads where they make a decision to become more active at a different level than they had been as far as how they represent the Black community. We know that Muhammad Ali is going to, change his name from Cassius Clay to Muhammad Ali, for one thing, which was in and of itself kind of controversial, but then he's going to speak out against the Vietnam War, which really was very controversial at the time. We look back on it now and it's a big duh, but at the time it was a really huge deal to make a stand for himself as a Black man and say, I see no reason why we should be going over there to fight this war. We have no gripe with those people. So for him to use his platform and set himself up for that was a big deal. Malcolm X would be murdered shortly after this date. And this would be during an upheaval of his in the church that not everyone held, and that kind of put a target on his back, as well as some of the messages he was putting out there at the time. And he knew he was being followed by the government, by the FBI and the CIA and the rest. And that's all kind of worked in here. Some of the stuff I found really interesting had to do with Sam Cooke. One of the things that Malcolm X makes a big deal about is getting on Sam Cooke for his music. He has such a terrific voice. I'm certainly, if you don't know his music, go on your YouTube and look it up. The guy had a phenomenal voice, but he receives a lot of criticism for recording what Malcolm X considered unimportant music, music that was kind of trite and kind of throwaway and pop. And apparently right after this, Sam Cooke recorded Change Is Gonna Come. Unfortunately, what I did not know was that he was murdered shortly after that. But the point is he chose to put himself out there and make his statement shortly after this imagined date and this imagined conversation. But then his career was cut off short because he was murdered. Jim Brown retired shortly after and chose to go into acting to represent himself in a different way. A lot is covered in the second hour of this about what was going on with the civil rights at the time, where these very famous people felt that they were, what they thought they could get, what they thought they could do, and also how they were kind of getting away with some stuff that Malcolm X was unaware of. He comes down on Sam Cooke pretty hard about the triteness of his recordings and such. And it's Sam Cooke who points out, of everyone in the room, he's the only one who created his own business who started his own record label and who sold the recording rights to other artists, and most of that money was going back to him that he could pocket. And therefore he was getting more power than probably anyone else in the room. Someone in there says, "I'm the only one here that doesn't get a paycheck by a white man," which I thought was a pretty great line. That's just one conversation. It's a really interesting movie. It made me want to look deeper into who these people were and kind of refresh my memory on their historical significance. And the fact that they chose to pick this particular date when everyone's career ends up branching off into these more interesting, more controversial, in some cases more tragic directions, I thought was very interesting. So it's less about whether this conversation actually happened, but it's more about how Malcolm X was influencing these other people at this time and how they were influencing him as well. So I absolutely recommend it. John, I know you've not actually seen it yet, but what are your thoughts on this one?
Well, it's definitely on my list of things to see. I'll probably end up watching it tonight, the day that we're recording this, because it's definitely one of the ones that I'm very, very interested to view.
Yes.
The thing about this film that really touched me, and I made a statement on my Facebook page, is how proud of Regina King I am. Regina King, as an actress, as a director now, but as a person, I don't know her personally. She doesn't know me from Adam, but followed her career from the time she was a kid on 227, and later making an appearance in Boys in the Hood, and more recently before this in the HBO adaptation of Watchmen. And she's phenomenal. And she provides the voice of Huey and Riley in the Boondocks cartoon, which was one of my favorites. So her list of accomplishments is just awesome. But this particular film has me interested because of the historical figures who feature into this: Malcolm X, Muhammad Ali, Jim Brown, and Sam Cooke. And just to touch upon what you were saying before I go too far in since I haven't seen the film, but just into the subject matter of the film, this particular film was produced and the screenplay was written by Kemp Powers, and it's based off of a stage play of the same name. But for those who don't know who Kemp Powers is, he is someone who has written several scripts for Star Trek Discovery Season 1 episodes. But most recently, he is credited with being the co-writer for the script of Pixar's Soul, which is an excellent animated film, I might add, that I have seen. I encourage anyone to go and check that out. That particular film is on Disney Plus, and it's awesome.
Haven't gotten to it yet, but it is on my to-watch list as well.
Yes. So just to give him his shout out, that is well deserved. As far as the historical figures, I have read the autobiography of Malcolm X twice, and it is very much worth the time to read. I have watched the Spike Lee film starring Denzel Washington twice. Very much a film worthy of watching. But reading a lot of what Malcolm X wrote and a lot of his speeches in the 90s when I was a young man coming of age, it taught me a lot about finding value in myself and not falling into the trap of being what I'm labeled in society, as it were, and knowing my worth and knowing my value. And that is a valuable lesson that has served me throughout my lifetime. Let's just face it, in the 60s, Black people were thought of as less than human still. The civil rights movement was going on. A lot of people fighting for the rights to just have basic freedoms and basic, pursuits of life, liberty, and happiness were being denied them. Dogs were being sicked on them. They were being hosed down. The police were against them. The very government of the United States wasn't doing as much as it should have, although there were some exceptions, most notably JFK. But as a historical figure, Malcolm X is someone who's played a pivotal role in my development and in my readings as I came to adulthood. As far as the other figures in this film, you have Muhammad Ali. And Muhammad Ali was an inspiration for me. I'm a huge fan of his, and I'm a huge fan of boxing in general. So, I've watched a lot of his fights in the 70s growing up, and, from all of his wins to his ultimate losses, and seeing, him retire. He's been inspirational to me as well on a personal level, his stance on the Vietnam War, but not just that, his humanitarian work. He may have talked a lot of shit, but he backed up being the good human he was by what he did. And his actions spoke a lot louder than his words. And the people who admired him and people who looked up to him were great people in and of themselves, such as Bruce Lee, who ultimately looked to him for fighting techniques. And he borrowed some of Ali's movements incorporating them into his own style. So, you've got a big shout out there. Mm-hmm. Prince. He and Prince were friends. I mean, and they died relatively close to one another. It was, a heartbreaking loss for the world when both of them passed. So, Muhammad Ali is a historical figure beyond compare, in my opinion. And he produced a daughter who went on to be a female champion boxer and a decent actress in Layla Ali. And so kudos to him. The next person on the list is Jim Brown. From a athletic standpoint, Jim Brown is one of the greatest running backs to ever hold the pigskin. And as a huge fan of the NFL, I saw a lot of footage and when he actually was playing back in the 60s, and he was a phenomenal force, someone who's emulated in the league to this day. I won't say anything other than I don't particularly agree with some of the political statements that he's made over the past 20 years, but that does not diminish him as an athlete, does not diminish him as someone with a voice, and it does not diminish him with regards to his acting. I've seen a lot of his films, and they were very pivotal in the 60s, showing a Black actor who was a former athlete. Before him was Paul Robeson, but he was one of the more notable ones of the 60s. He and Woody Strode, and then eventually this led to other people who were former athletes who became actors. Carl Weathers comes to mind. Sure. So you've got a lot of people who are standing on Jim Brown's shoulders for what he accomplished in his careers. And I say careers as an athlete and as an actor.
Yeah, definitely.
So that's definitely that piece of it. As far as Sam Cooke is concerned, like RJ said, if you have not heard him sing, and if you've not heard his music, you need to do so, because it is an important part of American history, let alone Black history. And You Send Me is one of his most popular songs. And that song was so beautifully sang that, I just, every time I hear it, it's just like I'm taken somewhere else. His voice was beautiful. He did make some questionable choices in his lifetime, but that doesn't diminish his talent and whatnot. With regards to his death and untimely murder in 1964, there was a lot going on with that. And to this day, it's thought to be a cover-up. It was ruled a justifiable homicide by the hotel manager where he was, but I do believe that, along with other people, that it was racially motivated based upon the time and some of the discrepancies in the eyewitness accounts. He had a predilection for very visible relations with white women. And at that time, being a Black man with a white woman, in some states, it was illegal to marry, and to date was to be looked down upon and attacked and sometimes even killed. So that's just to give you the gravity of what was going on in this decade, in this turbulent time of the 60s. So definitely something to be looked at. But when it comes to Sam Cooke, he is in a class by himself. He's one of the crooners that will go down in history as, the man who could make all the girls cry with his songs. And he was just a phenomenal talent. So that goes into that which this film is, with regards to who it's about. And one other thing, I'll say, having not seen the film, but just touching upon the actors whose work I am familiar with, is Aldous Hodge. He is an up and coming actor. He is very talented. I support this brother. He is on the rise, and I wish him nothing but the absolute best. I'm rooting for you. If by chance you get a chance to see this video, Aldous, this is one brother who's got your back. I'm very impressed with you as an actor, and that's not to take anything away from any of the other actors in this production. Leslie Odom Jr., who played Aaron Burr in Hamilton, definitely brilliant job there. You shined, and I saw you, and I know what you did there, and you did a good job of what you did. So kudos to you too, my brother.
Yeah, we have a review that we still have to put out about Hamilton, but he was the only one I was really familiar with, talking about the actors before seeing this movie. There's no weak link in here. I thought everyone did a fantastic job. I'll look forward to talking to you about it more in detail after you've seen it, John. I think you're gonna like it.
Absolutely, I'm sure that I will. And just moving into my third film in my list is The Best Man, which is a 1999 romantic comedy drama written and directed by Malcolm D. Lee, who happens to be the cousin of Spike Lee, and produced by 40 Acres and a Mule Filmworks, owned by Spike Lee. And Spike Lee served as producer on this film. This film stars Taye Diggs as Harper Stewart, Nia Long as Jordan Armstrong, Morris Chestnut as Lance Sullivan, Harold Perrineau as Julian Murchison, Terrence Howard as Quentin Spivey, Sanaa Lathan as Robin, Melissa DeSouza as Shelby, Monica Calhoun as Mia Morgan, Jim Moody as Uncle Skeeter, Regina Hall, who debuted in this film, by the way, as Candace Candy Sparks, and Victoria Dillard as Anita, and Gerard Bunch as Wayne. So I just wanted to put the cast out there because it's important, and people who are familiar with these actors, I'm familiar with Black film, know that they have gone on to bigger and better things, but this was very much an all-star cast where Black cinema is concerned for modern day actors, as it were, within the 90s and the early 2000s. So definitely was something to look at. This particular film also spawned a Christmas themed sequel called The Best Man Holiday, which I reviewed in our top Christmas film episode. So that was definitely a highlight to seeing this cast reunited for that film. But to talk about this film received mostly positive reviews from critics. It's at a 72% on positive rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And the consensus on the site says, with a strong cast and a host of well-defined characters, The Best Man is an intelligent, funny, romantic comedy that marks an impressive debut, which is also Malcolm D. Lee's debut as a writer-director. The film has earned a B+ average from users on Yahoo Movie site. Made on a relatively small budget of $9 million, the film went on to gross over $34 million, nearly 4 times as much as it cost to produce by the end of its theatrical run. The film received numerous awards and accolades. Terrence Howard's performance in particular earned much praise from many film critics. The Best Man is considered to be a breakout film, which alludes back to what I was talking about the actors involved. So you've got Terrence Howard, who later made the jumps to other films. He was the original James Rhodes in Iron Man 2009. So that there, he also starred in Empire, which is a very popular Fox television show. And you had Taye Diggs, who went on to star in other films. And I guess one of the most notable was How Stella Got Her Groove Back. If you kids don't know what that is, check that out. But also, all 8 of the principal cast members received nominations for the film at the 2000 NAACP Image Awards, with Terrence Howard and Nia Long winning. And the film itself also won Outstanding Motion Picture. So this is a group of friends who were college friends, and they're now out of college, and they're, moving into their careers or whatnot. And Harper, played by Taye Diggs, is a writer. Well, as most writers do, they write from their own experiences in life. Well, guess what Harper did? He may have changed the names, but when his friends, particularly his friend Lance, who has gone on to become a professional football player, begins to read some of the things in this novel, he begins to put together the pieces of who's who and what's what and what happened. And some of the things that happened, he's not happy about it. Now, granted, this is like 5 years after they all graduated from college. It's almost 10 years, actually. But you have to take in consideration that some of the revelations are going to ruffle feathers. And indeed, they did. And chaos ensues because Taye Diggs, Harper, is supposed to be the best man at Lance's wedding to Mia. And what is revealed causes a rift. And that's very mild phrasing there between the two. And so, just seeing these actors do their thing in this film is enough. But it was very well written, very well scripted. And I can't say enough positive things about the chemistry amongst the actors. So if you haven't seen The Best Man, go out and see it. It's one of Sanaa Lathan's earlier films. She is a tremendous performer in her own right. And then introducing Regina Hall, who has been in so many films that I enjoy. She's a talented actress as well. And I can't say enough about this film. This is one of my all-time favorite. I'm not a big romantic comedy person, but if I was going to list 5, this is like number 1.
I gotcha.
Number 2 is going to be on my honorable mention list, which came out 15 years after this film. But there are certain rom-coms that I really enjoyed. I mean, and that I've watched more than once. And this is one that I've watched several times. So I definitely recommend it.
Very cool. That I am not familiar with this one. I've heard the title, have not checked it out, did not know the plot, but being a writer, I understand how that happens.
Most definitely.
Even writing sci-fi and horror does not, remove you from your friends and family trying to guess where you're inspired and that sort of thing. And I'm sure you've experienced the same thing, John. So this sounds intriguing. I'll have to check it out.
Definitely. I would definitely recommend that you and our viewers and listeners check it out. I did want to go through a list. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of honorable mentions that I had, because I have so many films that I really enjoy, Black films that I really enjoy. But these were ones that came to mind that I wanted to make a name mention of. Do the Right Thing, which is a Spike Lee joint.
Love that one. Yeah.
You have to check that one out. Four Colored Girls, which is a very moving film. Check that out. You've got an all-star cast. You've got Janet Jackson in that film. I mean, you've got Kimberly Elise, Whoopi Goldberg. I mean, the list goes on. So you definitely want to check that out. And it definitely is important because it deals with the unity between Black women. School Days, which is another Spike Lee joint, which is the very first Spike Lee film I saw, actually. That film came out when I was in high school, but it deals with college and college hazing and coming of age during that time. Lawrence Fishburne is in that film. Giancarlo Esposito is in that film. And Tisha Campbell is in that film. So there are a lot. And of course, Spike Lee is in that film. He's in most of his films that he makes. So he had a role in that as well. So definitely something to look at there. The Five Heartbeats. If you love music, especially if you love R&B music and classic R&B music from the 60s, this film, it will not disappoint. It's produced by and starred, and he starred in it was Robert Townsend, who's a comedian of note. But this
I remember that, yeah.
This is a film that you really want to see. They didn't do the singing; they were dubbed over by the Dells, which is an R&B group of definite note. You want to go check them out as well. In the Heat of the Night. What can I say? It's Sidney Poitier and Rod Steiger. I mean, what you gonna do? This film is it's amazing. And
yeah, if I had watched it more recently, this would have been something I would have talked about this year. But there are other years. It may pop up.
Yes, and just to say that this film, for its time, showed a strong Black male protagonist who was going to stand up. It's not like Shaft where he's standing up against the man with the raised fist and solid. It's more or less he's standing up against the racism, and he's dignified enough to where, okay, he realizes this is the case, but he's just not going to stand for it, and he's going to make it known. And he does that in this film, in a scene with this white guy who's this rich dude, and he says something that the rich white guy doesn't like, and he slaps Sidney Poitier, and Poitier slaps him back, and the rich white guy is like, "Oh, you stepped out of your place." And Virgil Tibbs is a character that Sidney Poitier played, and this is like, that was inspiring for me seeing this as a little kid. I was like, oh, but that was one of those things that was like, he just wasn't going to take this. It may have been conventional for Black people to be treated that way, but he wasn't going to take it. And that in and of itself endeared him as one of my heroes. The last film on my honorable mentions list is About Last Night. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be thinking of the 1986 Demi Moore and Rob Lowe film, but that's not the one I'm talking about. Although I like that film, this is the 2014 version of About Last Night. And this film, although a remake, was one of those rare instances where I felt like the remake was better than the original. That's just a personal opinion. Part of it has to do with the fact of the chemistry amongst the actors in it, but it also has to do with it being relatable to me. This is an all-Black cast taking a spin on the original, which was an all-white cast.
I see. Okay.
You're seeing that. This was released on February 14th, Valentine's Day in 2014. The film stars Kevin Hart, Michael Ealy, Regina Hall. Again, we talked about Regina Hall, and Joy Bryant. And let's just say I related to everything. When this movie came out, I was married, I had kids or whatnot, but I related to those things that were going on with these characters because of my past experiences. So it was really interesting to see these characters go through what they were going through in this film. The chemistry, again, between the actors is just superb. I can't recommend this film enough. If you are going to watch a remake, and people who are familiar with the show or familiar with me know that I hate remakes. I just really don't like them. I don't care for them. But this is one of those very rare instances where I'm glad they made this remake. I would watch this version of About Last Night before I would watch the original. And that's not to downplay the original. I really enjoyed the original. I remember when it came out, but this one does it for me. Right down to, and I'm not a big fan of John Legend, but this particular soundtrack does a whole lot. You've got John Legend, you've got Bobby Caldwell, you've got Jamiroquai, you've got James Brown, you've got Gary Clark Jr. A lot of artists went into the soundtrack. So definitely check this out. I recommend this film to anyone who wants to see a romantic comedy, specifically one that focuses on Black characters. Just an awesome film all the way around.
Very cool. I did not prepare an honorable mentions list. I didn't get the memo on that, but I am looking forward to coming back to this topic for next year and digging in a little deeper and exploring a bit more, because there's so much to be said on the topic of Black film, and there's certainly going to be plenty throughout the year, and it doesn't need to be confined to one show, but there's so much to say and get into, and I think we're just scratching the surface on this topic.
Absolutely. So that wraps up this episode, and I just want to end the episode by saying that with what I started out saying, Black History Month is 1 month out of the year, but actually Black history is just a segment of American history. And I think that when you as a viewer are wanting to look at films, it should be transcendent, looking at a film and basing on whether or not you're going to be able to relate to the characters because they are different from you is shortchanging your own self when it comes to good work. And I'm not Asian, but I saw Crazy Rich Asians, and I love that film. And that was something that they needed because they needed representation. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to be as enjoyable and relatable for you if you aren't Asian. The same with Black films. Just because you're not Black doesn't mean that you can't enjoy the films and get something out of them that would be endearing to you. As a youth, one of my favorite coming of age films was The Breakfast Club. There was not one Black person in that film. But that being said, I was able to relate to the characters in the film, despite being a young Black man or a young Black kid. So that being said, we need to look beyond race when we're looking at films and transcend to where we're not having a oversimplified generalization on whether or not we're going to be able to relate to the film and its characters based upon a difference in race. I just
absolutely
want to make
that. And to follow up on your point, I mean, you've named a lot of movies I've not actually seen, and sometimes I think in certain communities you just don't hear about it necessarily. So I'm hoping one of the things that we're able to do as we continue with the show is make people aware of things they maybe have not necessarily heard of or were aware of that are excellent and worth checking out. And I can tell you for a fact you've made me aware of some things that I need to check out. So I mean, it starts from there and goes on.
Absolutely. So I want to take this time to thank our viewers and listeners for your time. We really appreciate you, and it's for you whom we create these episodes. We want to let you know that we value you, and we hope that you enjoy what we're doing, and we would like to hear from you. Please leave comments on the shows and give us a thumbs up if you like the show, and please subscribe. You can click the button or on our YouTube feed to subscribe to our channel so that you can get all the shows when they air, as soon as they air. And that way you won't miss anything. Also, thank one of our sponsors, OG Nerds. It's a community of nerds on Facebook that caters to nerds of a certain age, 40 or over. Although all 18 and over are welcome to join, it's OG for a reason. And it's a fast growing community, and we have a lot of fun. So I wanted to give a shout out to OG Nerds. And as many of you know, I'm an author, and I have a lot of stuff coming down the line in 2021. So I want to invite you to check me out on my website, johnfallenauthor.com. And where can they find you, RJ?
They can find me at rjsullivanfiction.com. I'm also an author, and you'll find my horror and ghost stories and science fiction on that site.
All right. Well,
John, just real quick, this was fun. I enjoyed going over this with you, and I look forward to doing more of this type of episodes in the future.
Absolutely. I had fun as well. It's always good to introduce new things to people and share the wealth, as it were, with regards to our cinematic likes and gems. And, I think that only breeds for a better community, a stronger community, and a more diverse community, and a better understanding of people. And it opens up for dialogue, which is what we had here. So thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. And until next time, bye. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by OG Nerds, a new social media community dedicated to nerds of a certain age, 40 and over, although all are welcome. Members are encouraged to share articles and links on their favorite nerdy topics such as animation, anime, art, books, writing, comics, manga, movies, music, sports, tech, science, TV, video games, RPGs, and more. Be sure to visit them on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums. And while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Morrisville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.